So the theory of economics that I am the arbiter creator of this theory is considered to me the wealth of nations and the theory of morality. Uh, my version of it. So Adam Smith had his version, and I have my version of wealth of nations and theory of morality. At the end of the day, the Federal Reserve has a place because of the banking system. It's a necessary system in order to have a flourishing economics of commerce, of businesses, of growing jobs. So the Federal Reserve is a necessary instrument as an organization. So in order to stimulate the economy and for commerce to grow and for prosperity to expand, not only nationally but globally, the Federal Reserve to this country's economy is consequential. It's necessary to have a Federal Reserve banking system in America. But what I think that the Federal Reserve will flourish our economies if the government stops taxing business owners and employees. So I am calling for elimination on business tax across the country, federally and locally, on a state level and on a federal level, for the government to not tax business owners or employees of business owners. So if you earn and you work for a living, you can keep 100% of the money you earn without being taxed as employees. The same for business owners. If you have a company, you can keep 100% of the money you generate as far as earnings. But as far as the government is concerned, they have the constitutional right to print money debt free to supply universal health care free of charge to the American citizens. The same thing for Social Security. The government has a constitutional right to provide retirees with Social Security retirement and also people with disability. But as far as America is concerned, and us as Americans in this country, we should be taxed for maintaining our infrastructure. As far as America's infrastructure, roads, bridge, highways, uh, first respond, emergency responders, military. So we should be taxed uh, a certain amount for these types of governmental necessary services. But as far as uh, universal health care, America should have the right to print money free of debt to supply the best doctors, the best hospitals, the best medical equipment, the best pharmaceutical. So the government should have the right to ensure that every American has access to life-saving universal health care. And so that should be a human right. Uh, that health care shouldn't be denied of anyone, any American citizens. So at the end of the day, I believe that the government has a constitutional right for those safety nets that are considered necessary. Uh, People should have the right to retire once they reach a certain retirement age. They should have the right to retire and enjoy the golden years of remaining life on this planet. So I believe in Social Security retiree benefits it should be a constitutional right, and also for universal free healthcare should be a constitutional right, and the government should have the constitutional right to print money debt free to provide these services for the American people. As far as the going back to the Federal Reserve, uh, think about how many businesses will flourish when business owners no longer have to pay taxation, or their employees no longer have to be garnished in their paychecks to pay taxation. So there would be a great move of business moving into this country just for that fact that you can run a business and not get taxed for your business, and your employees can work and earn their salaries without it being garnished by the government. So that will stimulate commerce. But in order to keep the prices at a reasonable price, because all that money starts to flood into the markets, and so there'll be too much money chasing limited commodities. So in order to stabilize the prices of goods on the market, on the open market, the government had to set price levels to impede any inflation. I'm not talking about the Federal Reserve. I'm talking about the government has to stabilize and set reasonable levels across the board when it comes for commodities being brought to market. So like that, you can afford to buy things at a reasonable price, at a reasonable fair price, without inflation running rampant. But so I think if the government phases in these type of economical designs, as a country, we will be more prosperous, and people will love to come to this country to live the American dream. Um, the Federal Reserve will be strong and vibrant. The markets, Wall Street markets, will be strong and vibrant. The American citizens would would deserve to keep 100% of their income earnings. Business owners will keep 100% of what they earn without without fear of burdensome taxations from the government. And but as citizens, we still have to pay some type of tax to maintain America infrastructure and emergency first responders. Uh, so that those things, if done correctly, because I study economics, so those things done correctly will make America a mecca of commerce. As far as the most advanced economy, prosperous economical system in the world, as far as a country, financial structures is set up across the board. There will be other countries that will want to emulate it, this type of economical system. So that's what because I study Ayn Rand, I studied Adam Smith, and all the great uh, economical theologians. I study and contemplated on these type of issues for a long time. So to me, if you got a prosperous private market of industry of commerce, meaning corporations, private businesses, business owners, and a strong, vibrant workforce, then that would stabilize the economy and make it grow when you eliminate taxations on those sectors. But at the same time, the government should be in charge of supplying universal free health care. They should be able to print money free of debt to have the best, like I said, the best doctors, the best hospitals, the best pharmaceutical uh, inst- uh, technologies, the best of universal health care that the government constitutionally should have a right, because human beings shouldn't be denied health care because they can't afford it, and then they end up dying because they don't have the ability to afford health care. A lot of American citizens suffer from disease, ailments, and just because they don't have enough money to pay their health care, they end up dying. That is not, that's not decent when somebody dies because the health industry says you don't have money to pay. So good luck. And these people end up dying of disease and ailments that can easily be treated. So for that reason, I believe constitutionally that it's a human right to seek health care and not be denied health care. It's a human right to strive to live healthy and not die because you can't afford to pay a medical bill. That's not right. So for that reason, I think the government constitutionally should have the right to print money debt free to fund hospitals, medical universities, pharmaceuticals, and like I said, the government can print money for that purpose debt free. Not having the government doesn't have to worry about paying it back. Like nowadays, the way healthcare works, the Treasury Department has to print IOUs, Treasury bills, and then have to borrow money. The government does through the Federal Reserve, for they can fund healthcare. And then it's charged with so much interest that the government doesn't know how to pay it back. That's why we have almost $31 trillion of debt because of the government obligations to healthcare and Social Security. So that system is broke. That system is broke. And what I'm initiating is to fix the system, to fix a broken system that needs to be fixed. So if you look at it, my theory of economics is good for the private sector, and when it comes to commerce and the Federal Reserve, they get to make their money, they get to make their profits, they get to grow their businesses, they get to grow their banking, liquidity markets, they get to grow everything, the Federal Reserve, the way I'm theorizing my theory. They get to prosper because their businesses won't get taxed. The workforce, they get to work and keep 100% of the money they sweat and labored for. Anybody knows that physically and mentally it is exhausting to work. So they employees have the right to keep 100% of what they work for when it comes to their paychecks. So the only medium that as citizens, the only medium that we should be taxed for is to maintain our infrastructure, roads, highways, bridges, for the services of first responders, emergency responders. So that's the only taxation that the government should apply to American citizens. But as far as healthcare and Social Security retirement for retirees and people with disability, the government should have the constitutional right to print money out of free of debt to maintain the constitutional right of universal, free, affordable health care for everybody, every American citizen. So, and as far as the prices of products on the shelf of stores and companies selling their commodities, as for, to keep the inflation at a stable level, the government should have the right to have a ceiling as far as that prices can't rise but so much that people, in other words, commerce cannot sell their products beyond, if it's inflationary, if it's in breaching and becoming high in inflationary pricing, then the government has the right to stabilize those prices. In other words, it cannot have runaway inflation, because if people are earning a lot of money, if businesses are making a lot of money, what's going to happen is there's going to be a lot of currency liquidity in the markets, and that can cause prices to rise up for purchasing commodities, products that are sold in the open markets. So the only way to keep inflation down is that it has to be artificially uh, kept at a reasonable level across the board when it comes to pricing. Meaning, you there's only a certain interest percentage that it would be allowed to be raised as far as people selling their products in the open market, because there will be so much money that's chasing limited products that then these products tends to rise as far as the pricing are concerned. So in order for the prices to be stabilized, there will be a reasonable ceiling, price ceiling across the boards of all goods, that by percentages, price interest percentages, that you cannot go beyond those prices, because that's the only way to keep inflation at a steady level. So, but as far as the economy goes, American economy, I apologize, I got my dog snoring in the background. But as far as the economy, countries like America with this type of economy, businesses throughout the world will want to come and do business in America. Uh, as far as employees, they get to labor and reap the fruits of their labors by not being taxed for it. Um, they will be living in a country where they have access to the best health care that, that can exist for free. This type of system will have the best health care than in the world, you know? So there should be those type of benefits for the private sector, as far as not being taxed in the private sector, for businesses, business owners, and employees. That will spawn prosperity, and it will grow the economy. The only thing that the government has to set a percentage of prices not rising, or the Federal Reserve can be in charge of setting prices of interest percentages of how much products should be bought for in the free markets. In other words, to control inflation, the Federal Reserve still needs to be in charge of that when it comes to the open markets and commodities being sold in the open markets. But as far as the government, they should have the constitutional right to print money free of debt to supply Americans with free access to healthcare, universal healthcare, and the same for Social Security, pension for retirees and people with disability. So this is what I'm working on as far as my thesis of economics, and so I think it will work. I think it will work. America will be more prosperous, more on all sides of government social programs, but at the same time, the economy will flourish when it comes to the private sector. So I think it will meet both sides, and the government, as far as debt obligations, the government would alleviate the burden that it bears now when it comes to having $31 trillion of debt, because they can't afford to pay for health care, or they can't afford to pay for retiree Social Security pension plans for American citizens. So that's bankrupting America. So I think the way I'm creating this new economic theory for America, policies, I think it will work. I think it will work. It won't be perfect. No system is perfect. But I think we will be better off than worse off, socially and economically. So we will still have free commerce, but we will have constitutional rights for universal health care. And the people that labor all their lives, they have the right to enjoy their golden years and retirement. So they should not be denied Social Security. So I think that this type of new theory of morality and wealth of nation, Adam Smith's title is Wealth of Nations, but I'm concentrating in this particular topic with America's wealth, the wealth of nation, of this nation, and the theory of morality, at least the way I see it economically. So to make perfectly clear, when it comes to my economical policies, when it comes to government being able to supply the best health care to American citizens possible. When I say the government can print money debt free, that the government doesn't have to pay a penny of it back in order to supply universal health care for all American citizens and a safety net for America's citizen labor force. So when people reach a retirement age, they can rest assured that they will get to enjoy retirement and have a pension for they can enjoy their golden years on earth. So America has a constitutional right, the government, to print money debt-free federally and state to supply health care, Social Security, retirement for American uh, population. So at the end of the day, the government doesn't have to be indebted for those services. They don't have to pay it back. The government officials, as far as the bureaucracy, don't have to worry about being bankrupt for providing health care or Social Security. Because constitutionally, the government has the right to supply these services to American citizens. The constitutional right, the human decency right to supply these rights to American citizens. So the government can print money debt free that the government doesn't have to pay not even a penny back as far as debt obligations are concerned. In other words, the government doesn't have to use the Treasury Department to beg for money in order to to sell treasury bills, security bonds, as far as debt instruments to the Federal Reserve, because the interest that the government is being charged by the open markets to borrow money to pay for health care is bankrupting this nation. The same for supplying Social Security is becoming bankrupt. So the government should cut they should be able to separate what is a constitutional right versus what is free commerce, to separate it. So the Federal Reserve will still exist. They will still control interest in the open markets as far as stable inflation for our currencies and free commerce. The Federal Reserve can they have a purpose for that reason as far as banking and loans and venture capital. Yes. But when it comes to universal health care, free universal health care, the government has a constitutional right to be able to print money free of debt. So the government doesn't have to pay a penny of it uh, as far as debt obligations. So they can print money constitutionally, and the government never has to worry about paying it back. Like the way the system exists now. The way the system exists now is that the Congress has to beg the Federal Reserve through the Treasury Department to loan it money in the open markets for interest for they can fund health care and Social Security, which is brought up the national debt up to 31 trillion. So in order to avoid the government hardship, the government should have the constitutional right to print money out of thin air, debt free, to supply the American people with free universal health care. That it is a human right for people to have the right to save their lives when they suffer of ailments, when they suffer of diseases. They have the right to seek help, medical help, debt free. They shouldn't be turned away for the love of money. Some people can't afford to pay $100 bill and they end up dying. Some people try to walk into the emergency room and get rejected because they owe $200 bill or a $200 medical bill. They can't buy the medicines and they die. So the system needs to be fixed. It's a broken system the way it exists now. So in other words, let me be perfectly clear on this aspect, that the government has the constitutional right to print money free of debt, to offer the human beings the right, the human right, to live and be prosperous in health, that people shouldn't be denied their lives because they can't afford to pay a medical bill. That's a human right. That's a constitutional right. Be able to seek medical help in order to be healthy and survive, free of ailments, free of diseases. You should be able to save your lives and not be rejected because you don't have no money. So the government should have the constitutional right to print money free of debt, so the government doesn't have to pay a penny of it back as form as debt obligations. In other words, no more should the government sell treasury bills, security bonds to the Treasury Department, to the Federal Reserve when it comes to supplying for healthcare, the funding for healthcare. That should be done away with. The government should have the constitutional right to print money debt-free to supply these healthcare and retiree pension plans for American people. And the government doesn't have to pay a penny of it as far as paying back debt. It's interest free. It's interest free. And they can print it free of charge with no debt tied to it as far as borrowing for interest. The government shouldn't have to borrow for interest when it comes to supplying health care to American people. The government should have the right to print money free of debt to afford all American people a decent life, way of life as American citizens. So for that reason, the government should be free of debt. They should have the constitutional right to print money free of debt and provide the best health care possible to the American people. The same for Social Security, retirees, and people with disabilities. Now, as far as the free markets, Wall Street, the central banks, the commercial banks, yeah, the Federal Reserve should have the right to lend money to businesses with interest. If you want to start a business, you can borrow money. If you want to buy a house, you can borrow money. If you want to get a car, you can borrow money. And the banks will lend it out at interest. That's how free markets work when it comes to commerce and the division of labors. If your laboring is to reap the gains of your laboring within your division of labors as free commerce. But so the Federal Reserve can lend money for interest, and also businesses deserve to earn their monies free of taxation. The same for their labor force. They should keep their laboring sweat, blood, and tears Their checks shouldn't be garnished. They should keep 100% of what they work for, free of taxation. But then the Federal Reserve has to be in charge of maintaining reasonable prices of commodities in the markets that are being sold or brought to the markets by merchants and business owners. In other words, that the Federal Reserve has to stabilize pricing so runaway inflation doesn't set in, because everybody's keeping more money, investing, buying, and there will be a boom, economic boom. But in order to stabilize the prices of commodity goods, the Federal Reserve has to have pricing interest uh, controls to be able to stabilize the commodity goods on the open markets as far as pricing goes. And also when it comes to lending out money for interest, they gotta they gotta know how to manage the interest of loans for business owners, startup companies, families that want to borrow money to buy their houses or their cars. So the Federal Reserve will have control of the private sector. But at the same time, like I said, businesses and won't won't be taxed. It's zero taxation on businesses. The same for employees. When they work and they get a paycheck, they get to keep 100% of what they earn, free of taxation. But now the only taxation, like I said, as American citizens, we should pay unitely as citizens for our infrastructure, roads, bridges, highways, emergency first responders. We should have an obligation to pay into our government infrastructure to maintain a prosperous, modern society of our country. To have, because right now our infrastructure is crumbling. Decrepit bridges that are crumbling, highways that are falling apart, roads that need to be repaved, water lines that are outdated as far as water supply lines and gas lines that are falling apart, electrical grids that needs to be modernized. All that we should pay taxation because it's our country, it's our neighborhoods, is our infrastructure. So we should be obligated to share a burden as citizens, some of reasonable taxation, a fair and reasonable taxation to maintain our infrastructure. So for that reason, the government should tax American citizens for those particular reasons. But as far as the other sectors of commerce, it should be free. Capitalism should be uh, vibrant when people are allowed to keep their money. They manufacture their goods, they bring it to market. They should keep 100% of what they earn. The same for the employees. And so the Federal Reserve has the right to govern those free sectors because they're specialists in those type of sectors. Banking, venture capital, Wall Street, that's all necessary. That's part of free markets, free commerce. That's what makes vibrant an economy. So yeah, but I don't believe that business owners or employees should get taxed. So, but the Federal Reserve will still need to control interest as far as the money supply when it comes to loaning money with interest, and as far as price stabilizations of of goods being brought to market. The Federal Reserve should control those interests as far as they shouldn't let inflation go have a runaway effect. They should control it so the pricing are stable. Price stabilization, interest uh, adjustments as far as how much commodity goods can be sold for, and in order to prevent hyper runaway inflation because there's too much money in the markets. So we should have price stabilizations, but at the same time, the Federal Reserve, by controlling price stabilizations of commodities from from having runaway inflations, because there's too much money uh, following limited commodities. So there's a the Fed has to set pricing, expectations of how much is too much. You get what I'm saying? In order to control pricing from not experiencing uh, hyperinflations. But at the same time, the Federal Reserve should control and have the right to control how much they lend money for as far as interest. But as far as the private sector, yes, businesses shouldn't be taxed. Employees shouldn't be taxed. Corporations should have the right to keep their money. Businesses, whether they be small or big, should have the right to keep their monies. And all of the employees throughout the division of labors of this country's workforce should have the right to keep 100% of what they sweat, blood, and tears earned. That shouldn't be garnished. They have a right. They work for it. They got a right to keep it. So they can make sure they can. We as government, we can make sure that they keep 100% of what they earned, as far as paychecks are concerned. But that's basically it. Uh, as far as my theory of wealth of this nation and the theory of morality of this nation when it comes to economical theory. Now, this system is there, there's no system on earth that's perfect. There's there's always flaws in every system, but I think the broken system that we have now, I think this will go a long way to fixing it, to fixing America's economical woes when it comes to our domestic economy, our national economy. So this is my version, Ramiro Latorre Jr. version of the theory of morality and the wealth of this nation. I know Adam Smith says the wealth of nations when it comes to global economics and the difference between micro and macro, but I'm not talking about in this tutorial about international commerce with other nations' economies. But I'm just concentrating in this tutorial on our domestic economy. So this is this is what I'm this is what I am uh, stipulating that might be able to fix our broken system of governance when it comes to America's debt obligation and 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 the critical aspects of what's wrong with our system. And so I think this will go a long way. And I study Ayn Rand. Ayn Rand. You might watch her movies, John Shrove, some movies, but Alan Greenspan, The Disciples. I study all those. And I study Adam Smith. He's my favorite economical theologian, Adam Smith. So I understand free commerce and respecting the division of labors. That's why I'm coming up with this type of economical theory. But at the same time, I recognize that humans have a human right to defend their lives. That's a human right when it comes to healthcare. A human has a human right to defend their lives. And they shouldn't be denied the right to seek to live. To seek to live, a human shouldn't be denied healthcare. That's a constitutional birthright. If you're a human, you have the right to live. That's something constitutionally. So I feel strong about this belief that constitutionally a human has the right to live and shouldn't be denied the right to live when it comes to healthcare.